Welcome to Local Football Flavor, where we talk to local fans to find out what's going on with their team. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the Indianapolis Colts. You know, Indianapolis has had a really weird start 3 weeks into the season. If you think about it, coming into the season, they're the runaway favorite of they should win the AFC South without even breathing. You know, Tennessee's done. Henry's out of it. This is the Colts' time to shine. And then week one happened, and we tied Houston. Dude, talk about demoralizing. Week two, they go down to Jacksonville, and it seems like every year there's a big L, and that one wasn't pretty. But week three just happened. And when you beat Patrick Mahomes, things feel special. And it doesn't really matter how we got there. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our guest today. He is Jon Robling. He has been in Indianapolis long enough to remember when they, being the Colts, came to Indy in 84. He has been at the AFC clinching game that they had in 87, 06, and 09. This guy is a diehard Colt fan, and I cannot wait to find out more about the Indianapolis Colts. Welcome to Local Football Flavor, where we talk to local fans to get the real information of what's going on with their team. Hey, and welcome all the team players back. As we're saying, today we're going to be talking with the Colts. So, Jon, obviously week three was huge. Why don't you break down what that was like for you on Sunday afternoon there and how life was?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Thanks for being here.
No problem. So the game, it felt like it had to be a must win. I don't know anyone that expected us to win, honestly. We've played horribly on offense, but we just kind of hung around, and it was just so emotional. I really didn't think we were going to win. Honestly, we got bailed out because of the penalty. However, our defense played great and our special teams played great. It's just our offense feels, honestly, they feel a couple months behind the defense and the special teams.
Yeah, no, that was certainly something I noticed. And I think about the special teams of the Colts here. You know, earlier in the year, you're kicking the ball out of bounds. You're given a huge field position. Obviously, your entire season feels different if Headband doesn't miss that kick in overtime.
Right.
And you guys are sitting here at 2-1 opposed to triple ones.
Right.
And when I saw those punts, I mean, the first one being the muff, and you get the ball in the red zone immediately after basically going 3 and out. And then even the second one, I believe it was in the second quarter when you stuffed them there on the one, and then you did another 3 and out after the Kelsey drop. Your special teams just went in an entire spiral that most people never get out of, let alone get to essentially the peak, less than 2 weeks later.
Yeah, they played great. Chase Mclaughlin is a guy that we had in 2019 when Vinatieri really just couldn't kick it well when he was injured or whatever they said he was. Mm-hmm. So I actually called that. I knew we would get Chase. The team, the ownership and everything likes him. So I called it like days before we signed him. But he nailed a 51-yarder. He hit like a 45-yarder. And man, that first game we had it and we played horrible. And all we needed to do was hit a 42-yarder. And Blankenship, I mean, he wasn't even close.
I won. That thing was shame.
Oh, so painful.
So, the question here, because there's a lot of correlations to the same thing that Tennessee did in week one. Horrible game. You guys were just the inverse. Your defense kept you in it and came back late, and their defense blew up, was what fell up the second half. So, what my question is like when you look at the other teams in your division or just general rivalries, do you guys watch the clock and see like, at least Tennessee's screwing up too? Or is it just like we're only focusing in-house?
No, for sure we watch, man. I always look at the AFC South every week. I'm a little surprised at Jacksonville, but it's only been 3 games. Them beating us in Jacksonville did not surprise most Colts fans. They own us in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. Just some teams have a number of the other teams. It's honestly, we kind of own the Chiefs. It's crazy, but like Colts have had a great record against the Chiefs for whatever reason, even with Mahomes. But I'm not worried about Houston. I mean, I think that they'll win maybe 3 or 4 games. They're kind of in rebuild mode still. I don't think Davis Mills is going to be the guy. So I just don't. And his neck, oh my God! I call him Davis the Neck Mills.
Twitter.
It's amazing. It's an amazing neck.
Yeah. It's very luxurious.
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful neck. But I don't really worry about them. Jacksonville, here's the thing. Everybody's like, oh my God, they're good. Well, shit, they've had how many top 5 first-round picks the last 6 years? It's going to eventually, they're going to be good. They're going to get results. And plus, they got rid of Urban Meyer. So, they're going to be playing with some house money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you say that about the first-round picks. I'm in a division here with Cleveland, man. And, it's not always a guarantee that things are going to work out.
No, that's true. You know what's crazy is whenever we got Trent Richardson from Cleveland, right? Mm-hmm. We had Ryan Grigson as our GM. Everybody in Indy hated Grigson. He traded a first-round pick to Cleveland for Trent Richardson.
I remember that.
He had only played 1 year at Cleveland. I think he got around 1,000 yards, right? We gave up that first-round pick. You know who they used it on?
Oh, is that the 21 best 21 party ever as a quarterback?
Johnny
Manning. That's right.
So it's like, really?
It's a win-win situation for both of you.
Right.
You both got garbage. It works out. I got a question for you, John.
Sure.
With the change in quarterback situation here, going from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan. Now, we know Carson Wentz has a history of just giving up as the season goes on, but we also know that at least the joke is in our auction league that we have that Matt Ryan is he's just a virus for any team,
especially fantasy.
And so when it comes to the culture, do you see as like a fan that fans are getting behind Matt Ryan more than they were Carson Wentz, or do you think it's about even?
Carson Wentz was definitely more popular after 3 weeks, I'd say. He got somewhat of a pass. He got hurt in training camp last year, Carson, and they were saying, it's going to be 7 to 12 weeks. Well, he came back in like 6. So the fans kind of got behind him because he played hurt. But we started awful last year, too. I think we were 0-2 or 1-3 after like 4 weeks. The problem with Ryan, and I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I really don't. But he's had 7 fumbles in 3 games. He's killing us with that. You got to throw it away, dude. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I wasn't a Wentz hater until the season blew up at the end of the year. The thing that Wentz could do, and you already know this, he could buy time because he could extend plays. Ryan can't do that. And our offensive line was better last year than it is this year. So I think Wentz would actually be better with this patchwork offensive line than Ryan has the first 3 weeks. But I'm willing to give Ryan time. I think he's a good player. He's smart. He won us the game yesterday on that drive. I just don't know how well he fits with our offensive line, which is super shaky, even though we've invested tons of money into it. Furthermore, you didn't go out and get him any weapons. You drafted a second-round player, Pierce, who'll be okay, but he's still
Pierce
a rookie.
Looked good yesterday.
He did, finally. And then Jelani Woods is a rookie who got the 2 touchdowns yesterday. So that was the only, investment you did. You didn't go out and get, a veteran receiver. You didn't bring back T.Y. I just don't know how well Ryan's going to do, honestly.
And in addition to that, John, sorry to interrupt, Joe. In addition to that, do you feel – I felt like last year, and I don't know if it was an aberration or anything, because Jonathan Taylor, this is like his initiation and whatnot, but do you feel that with the offensive line that you have and the type of quarterback that Matt Ryan is, do you feel like he will flourish this year or at least come back down to earth just a little bit? And if he does come back down to earth, do you see the Colts as being a team that could stay competitive in the long run, knowing Matt Ryan's problems that he has? Do you feel like the defense can keep them afloat? So it's kind of like a 7-part question.
It's all good. So I'll go and I might ask you to, redo the question, but first part, no, he will not flourish. I just don't see from a stat standpoint, I don't see him flourishing. I think he can win games, but I don't see him putting up big numbers. We just don't have the weapons. We've got Pittman Jr., who's double teamed half the time. And then you've got some rookies. You've got a guy named Paris Campbell from Ohio State that gets hurt every year. I'm amazed he's even played the first 3 games, even though he's been invisible. And then you let Zach Pascal go. He was a vet. He's on Philly right now. We just don't have veterans. So no, I don't see Ryan flourishing. If we can get Shaq Leonard back, a.k.a. Darius Leonard, a.k.a. the Maniac, whatever you want to call him, if we can get him back, but he's a mystery. It's like the Andrew Luck situation all over. No one knows what's wrong with him. I mean, we know he had back surgery, but he didn't have it till June. It's just, it's so annoying. But anyway, if our defense gets him back, we can play at a high level, I think, enough to hopefully buy enough time for the offense to just get going a little bit more, man. But some of it, obviously, to me, is play calling. Frank Reich, oh my God, he makes it so hard sometimes. It's like with his wildcat and his going for it on 4th down, and it never works. And he just does some stupid stuff.
Yeah, and that happened yesterday. I mean, I think there was twice you guys went for it on 4th and it didn't work out. Yep. And the one, Taylor jumped from like 5 yards behind the line to try to get over it. But my question, going back to your line and Matty Ice there, he's obviously not the most mobile guy. You alluded to how he's fumbling all the time, and moving him around just opens the opportunity for it. I have seen him doing more rollouts and stretch plays where he's trying to throw the ball in the 3 games bringing you guys up than the entire Falcon. Like, why are you trying to push this kind of thing that is not a round hole? Why are we trying to make this happen?
This is why Colts fans have a thing against Frank Reich. I liked him so much in the beginning, and it's not that I think he's a bad guy. Play calling. That's not what Matt Ryan does. He doesn't extend plays. You don't really want to get him out on the edge. I mean, he's going to get hurt. He's 37 or whatever. So I don't have an answer for that. To me, run him in shotgun, have him do 3-step drops, stuff like that, where he can get rid of it quickly. The only thing I can think of as to why they're having him do that is the receiver core maybe needs an extra second just for them to get open because, like I said, they're not veterans. We don't really have any burners, anybody that could just, take the top off and just go a 50-yard dig. We just don't have that kind of team.
Yeah, that part's apparent. The one play that you guys, I think, is your best bread and butter play is the play action, him dump it off 10 to 15 yards in the middle of the field.
We have to do absolutely. We have to do crossing patterns with Pittman, and Pierce is pretty good at crossing patterns. We got to do those. I'd like to see us run Hines. He's kind of our backup running back slot receiver. We re-signed him. He's been on the team a couple years out of NC State. I'd like to see him go more in motion and kind of just have a little bit more movement on the offense and keep the defense guessing. But they don't really do that much either. But I'd like to see them do that.
That's fair, son. I noticed. And the other thing I noticed, and this is coming across in the stats and my eye test, so it's pretty apparent. Your line doesn't exactly make holes for Thomas, but Thomas moves the line. And I don't think I've ever seen a running back at his age be okay with that. Like, normally when we see a running back in our league. Sorry, I said that wrong again. I knew I was going to mess it up.
We always think of Jonathan Taylor Thomas from home.
I do. Or Jonathan Taylor touchdown, man. Yeah, JTT, Jonathan Taylor touchdown. Right. But my apologies for that. But my point is he has to have so much discipline because he is getting hit at or behind the line of scrimmage consistently. Yes. And then his yards after contact is through the roof. I mean, that's not an easy way to live as a running back. And so many young guys basically end their career because they can't handle that. Because when you're at Wisconsin, that don't happen.
For sure. It's something we're all concerned about. He takes a lot of hits. He starts slow, I think, even though he had a big first game. He's still top 5, I want to say, currently after 3 games in rushing yards. So he had like 160 that first game where we tied. Not too many the second game. I think he had around 75 yesterday. So he's not playing bad. I think a lot of it's the line. Another thing that he does sometimes is he doesn't get downhill. It's like he'll cut it too close to like the left or the right guard instead of going all the way out past the tackle. And Edgerrin James was awesome at that back in the day where we could run stretch plays and you almost go to the sideline and get downhill. Taylor, they don't really run that action for him, and I'd like to see him try that just so he can get more downhill. But for him, it's either run right by the center in the A gap, or he'll try to run off the guard, and it just hadn't been there.
Yeah. So you're comfortable.
Yeah. So with the staff and the personnel that they have right now, do you feel like Taylor's success do you think Taylor would be more successful if he had a different quarterback, or if they had more talent in the wide receiver position? Because last year they had pretty much the same thing. I mean, T.Y. Hilton is a burner, but like he was hurt, from my understanding, a lot last year too. So, I mean, when it comes to that, he did really well last year, and you said the offensive line was better. But, going forward with this type of personnel, can he be successful? And where do you see the Colts at come maybe 5 weeks from now?
He will not be as successful stats-wise as he was last year, in my opinion. So, yes, we had better receivers last year, like I said, Pascal and Hilton. But another guy that we haven't talked about, who was also a pass catcher, but he was a blocker, was Jack Doyle. He was a tight end, and he retired. And he was the guy that could just do everything. I love Doyle. He was such a good dude. He's from Indy. He went to school in Indy, high school. Not having him, he was such a good blocker, and I think he helped Taylor a lot. So stats-wise, no, I don't see Taylor getting what he got. He led the league in rushing by a bunch last year.
Oh, yeah.
I see him more of like a 1,200, maybe 1,300 yard season if he stays healthy. In 5 weeks, I'd have to look at our schedule. I know we play Tennessee. I'm kind of a game at a time.
Yeah.
I know we play Tennessee at home. I think we win that. I do. I just think it's a must win. I'd have to look at our schedule, but in 5 weeks, I would want us to go at least 3-2, hopefully. Otherwise, you're just digging a hole.
So one of the things you mentioned there earlier is how, in my opinion, you and Tennessee rivalries as y'all seem very similar. And the Colts, the Chiefs rather, that game yesterday, I think kind of proved it. You guys collectively basically didn't run any drives. You guys were the Kansas City was so scared of never getting off the field that they made their offense hold the ball in a way that Kansas City does not normally know how to play. And to me, that's a sign of a team that knows who they are and how they want to win games. It is apparent that if you let the Indianapolis Colts have the football, they will keep it forever because of this ground game we're talking about. And to get the Chiefs from the jump, not wanting to play Chiefs football. I mean, obviously going up 7-0 on the essentially the kick six is basically what you did, causing that fumble. It was 7-7. Like the Kansas City got back into it real quick, but immediately they just went back into it. We got Colt control the ball. We're scared of what's going to happen, and we just let Taylor just keep running and running and running all over again. So to me, to have that kind of respect, that is how people treat Tennessee. And I think that is something that if you get Kansas City out of their game before they even get off the plane, that's amazing.
But see,
and I just wanted to point that out front.
That's the scary thing too, is though that didn't happen in Jacksonville. And when it
didn't.
When you get a team to shut you down, when you're dinking and dunking, because Aaron Rodgers was doing this yesterday too. When you're dinking and dunking all over the field, and like John said, where you don't have a deep threat that is somebody you're scared of. Now, they didn't have Pittman against Jacksonville, so that game could have been a lot different. But they held Taylor to like 13 yards, which is insanity, right? Yeah. Is there you got to play Jacksonville again this year, but if that happens and if people figure out that that's your team identity, how much does that worry you?
Well, it worries me a little bit, but I think Jacksonville was an anomaly, partly because, like you said, we did not have Pittman Jr. We didn't have Pierce either. And those are that's your number one and that's your number two. And you haven't beat them there since 2014. Yeah. And you're a young – it's killing me. I just think we went in there just trying to played the best we could, but after like 10 minutes, we knew it's not going to work. And we just kind of gave up, honestly. I turned that game off at halftime. I knew we were going to get beat. We just didn't look good. It just wasn't going to work. So I don't worry too much long-term about that happening again. I think we'll get beat again pretty decent, maybe, if somebody catches us. But if we can keep everybody together, I think we'll be okay. What they did basically is they just stacked the box. They put eight dudes up on the line, and we're like, go ahead and see if one of your receivers, I don't even know who the best receiver was, that Paris Campbell maybe, who never has had a decent game ever. We're going to have them beat us, And it's like, yeah, they just knew we were going to hand it off to Taylor. We were so one-dimensional that game.
Mm-hmm. Definitely hurts.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all. That's the template how you beat Baltimore too, by the way.
Because
that's exactly what people did to Baltimore. Just New England can't, which makes it really sad to be.
I would hate to be a receiver and play on Baltimore. I know Lamar Jackson's awesome.
He's not though.
He puts up stats. He's like the Russell Westbrook of like the NFL, right? From Russell 2 years ago. He'll put up crazy stats, but they get to like maybe the second round of the playoffs because he never plays playoff football.
He's not accurate enough.
How you say that, John, though, is that throughout our whole discussion so far, you've been making sure to be very, very clear about successful stat-wise, because a lot of people in the world, myself included, we always think fantasy football, but stats don't necessarily equal how that game was played all the time. So I like how you're making that delineation. And I disagree with you, Joe, that Lamar Jackson isn't a good quarterback, but
go for that all day.
That's neither here nor there.
That's why I do the strategies of football and break down the tape for this exact point. The one that I'm getting all kind of flack in is because I broke down Tua in week 1 and then in his 6 touchdown game. He wasn't better. He actually threw on both of his deep bombs to Hill. He threw interceptions 2 plays before each of them. Just Baltimore can't catch. Their secondary is so overrated. But the Lamar Jackson's not accurate downfield. He has people who get sucked in because they're afraid to death of him. He can throw a rainbow and Bateman's fast and can run under it. That's their offense. End of discussion. Double team Bateman, you beat him all day. The blueprint beat Baltimore. So, but what I saw Pierce yesterday, I thought was encouraging. I get what you're saying about him. He's not a traditional 4-3 blister down the field, but the way he was sitting in between the safety layer of the cover 3 and the linebacker layer, you don't get that out of a rookie very often. And to me, that's an incredible find from just where he's mature at a wide receiver standpoint.
Yeah, we knew all about Pierce. He played for Cincy. They played IU. IU had a lot of hype last year in college, and Cincy came in and just blew the doors off of them. And Pierce had like 2 touchdowns. So I'm sure the Colts knew all about him even before that game. He's just a position of need, and we didn't have a first-round pick last year. He was our first pick in the second round. He runs good routes. He's got size. He's 6'3". Oh, man. I'm going to throw a name. This is how old school I am and who he reminds me of. So there's Christian McCaffrey, but he had a daddy named Ed McCaffrey who played for the Broncos.
There you go, yeah.
Pierce kind of reminds me of him. He's a big dude. He's fast. He's not like big like a tight end like McCaffrey was all muscled up and everything. But like he runs those kind of routes, and I think that he'll be a red zone threat because he's 6'3", and I think he'll just catch those, maybe like those little crossing patterns like he did yesterday, maybe the occasional comeback route. But we need him to take pressure off of Pittman Jr., who just gets double teamed all the time.
Yeah, I think you really have something that can open up there once you guys fully start utilizing them and keeping Ryan in tackle box, because spreading him outside is dangerous. So the one thing that I definitely want to bring up, we might have to bring this up after the break, is I want to, on the other side, talk about your defense, especially how many plays when you guys, or when Kansas City was and goal. I think there was about 9 of them in that game. And if I recall correctly, they only got 7 points out of it. So we're going to talk about that after the break and continue this chat. This episode is sponsored by the podcast Father and Joe. Father and Joe aims to bring individuals into a better relationship with God. Each episode discusses an element of the human experience that we all can relate to, as well as questions about faith. What are indulgences? What's going on with purgatory? Why can I mentally grasp the concept of God, but I don't feel him in my heart? During each episode of Father and Joe, we are invited to enhance our relationships, and in doing so, we will improve ourselves and society. Download Father and Joe every Tuesday. So we thank you for watching this episode of Local Football Flavor. We know there's a lot of different things you can be dealing with your time, so we appreciate you either listening or watching us in whatever way you're digesting us here today. So we here at the episode want to try to request helping us out in one of three different ways, because all three ways will help us. First is the analytics. If you can either click like or subscribe on whatever platform you're watching us on, it makes a tremendous difference, as those algorithms kind of control what our popularity will be. And you, our listeners, are the only one that can help us win those analytics games. So by clicking like and subscribe, it makes a tremendous deal for us. And leaving reviews and comments help tremendously as well. So that's what we ask you as a listener to do. If you're interested in the show, you'd like to be a guest on the program, please reach out to us. We love talking to people, and it's our conversation about your favorite team, letting people know what's really going on that the national media normally misses. So we would love to have those conversations with you. And the third way is the sponsors. As you've noticed, we've already had some sponsors reach out to us here. You can see one down here in the corner. You can easily be in the scroller along the bottom, having your own personal message, as well as all other fun things like controlling the jersey I'm going to wear, or that little teddy bear behind me can be one of your team logos things. You can make me wear a stupid cheese head if that's what you want to do. All of those things are available by reaching out to us at localfootballflavor@gmail.com. We thank you guys very much for being a part of the show. And now let's resume to today's episode. So, yeah, indeed, wanted to talk about the defense here in the second half, and a lot of good things I saw out there as a beloved. I like defense more than most people as a starting point. So just take me through what those goal line stands were, because it felt like Kansas City, just no matter how talented Mahomes was, no matter how many trick plays they did with Kelsey, it wasn't hatting it. And most defenses crumble under that brain trust that is the Reid system.
Well, we got lucky with a couple things. One, their kicking game's horrible. It's actually worse than when we had Blankenship. So they had to get all cute, I think, just because Reid didn't have any confidence that Amendola, or whatever his name was going to make a field goal. We played aggressive. I think part of the thing why we did well yesterday was our tackles. DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart both played awesome. They were getting pressure. We actually got a sack from Ngakoue. He was the big free agent guy we got from the Raiders. They actually showed up. Your boy Okereke got burned in that first quarter, though, by Kelsey. So he came back and adjusted a little bit better. And honestly, man, the Chiefs aren't the same team as they were a year ago without Tyreek Hill. Nobody really talks about it, but they're a different team. They really are.
Yeah, they're much more trying to control situations. The one thing the Chiefs has not gotten done with, and I said this in a short and people got really angry about it, the number one weakness of the Chiefs is their arrogance. They still think that they can score 100 points any single time, and that's why they lost that playoff game to Cincinnati. It almost cost them against the not San Diego anymore, the Chargers on that Thursday night game. And that's a very arrogant unit over there. But of course, Mahomes is a perennial MVP candidate. It's not like it's undeserved, but it's a thing.
Yeah.
So that's my take on what I'm seeing there. But as you mentioned, 58, when they blitzed him, he was almost always getting home. And then it felt like midway through the third quarter, they just stopped. Like, is there a reason to it? Did he get nicked up and I missed it?
Well, Gus Bradley is our new defensive coordinator. He also came from the Raiders. He doesn't ever blitz. So we run basically, it's like a cover two, like we've always kind of ran, but we don't really blitz. We just run the four D guys up front. And really, that's it. We'll do. Yesterday, though, we were doing a little bit more man-to-man, like on our corners. So Okereke is a nice player. He's He's not he's not on the same level as Leonard, but he can cover certain players. He can cover a linebacker, or I'm sorry, a tight end as a linebacker. But I don't know if he'll ever be like all pro or a Pro Bowl or anything, but he's certainly serviceable. We had another guy 2 years ago named Anthony Walker, and he's now on the Cleveland Browns, if you've heard of him. He was a nice player. And I liked him actually on the Colts, but they liked Okereke so much as a rookie that they let Walker go. And basically Okereke's taken his spot just because he can cover better.
Okay, so that makes sense, but it was noticeable. Maybe they were just sticking him at DN for a couple plays, but in the first half, he was getting pass rushes coming up the field aggressively, and it was making Mahomes do things. There's a play where Mahomes spins around in circles twice just to miss an open receiver, and it was basically all because 58 was in his head. I think it was about midway through the second quarter, if I'm recalling correctly. It was beautiful.
Yeah, Mahomes doesn't like to get touched at all. He complains as much as Brady does. It gets on my nerves.
It's worse. It's worse than Brady.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you something. When you watch the Week 1 game with Houston, I mean, being 1-1-1 is just weird in general. But being 1-1-1 with Houston is also just in general very weird. But what I noticed was that their tight end, O.J. Howard, didn't really get a lot of targets and then scored like 2 touchdowns or something like that. It seemed like that game was a very winnable game from a defensive standpoint, and that Houston kind of got lucky on a couple of plays to a guy that nobody really cares or knows about since he's been on Tampa. So it's like, do you feel like in that game they really were just kind of like, they played better to Kelsey, knowing that Kelsey is a better player, and just the other guy was just luck? That was just luck.
I think that they're just going to continue to get better. Throughout training camp, everybody that was with the Colts media was saying how the defense was, further along than the offense, and that still obviously holds water right now. First game, we just didn't play well. We didn't play well the second game. Specifically, we don't get pressure on the quarterback. We didn't those 2 games. We did yesterday a little bit. So that first game, Davis, the neck Mills, he had all day to throw it. I mean, he was wide open on those touchdowns. And a lot of that was not necessarily them just out scheming us or anything like that. It was just blown coverages. So I think that we'll get better. I like our defense, honestly. I think we've got certain pieces. We've got a good D-line. We have good linebackers if Leonard comes back. And then you went out and you got Gilmore at cornerback. You've got Kenny Moore, who has not – he's been in witness protection so far this year. I don't know what's wrong with him. But last year he was good. And he's like your nickel corner. So on paper, we look to have a decent defense. I think it may just take us a couple weeks just to get the whole – Gus Bradley system down, since he's a new coach.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that contrast because obviously your old defense coordinator is now in Chicago. And the one thing that was very apparent with your system last year was that it was basically an execution style defense. They weren't trying to be like the Niners and draw up unblocked people and doing schemes and just hope you don't find our vulnerability. They played it more as we're just going to be constant everywhere, and we're just going to coach our people up to be the absolute best at this core concept. Is that essentially still what we're trying to do there in Indianapolis, or are we getting closer to crazy?
Not in my opinion. Eberflus is the guy that was our D coordinator. That's the Bears coach now. When they signed him as the Bears coach, it was one of the happiest days of my life. I was not a fan. Soft cover 2. I mean, so soft, giving a receiver 10 yards. All they really did was they lived and died by the turnover. So what I think they did was they funneled everything towards Leonard. Darius Shaq Leonard. And that's why he got so many turnovers. Now, he has a propensity of knocking the ball out. He's a natural at that. But if you would put Leonard on any other team in the NFL, there's no way, in my opinion, that he'd have the numbers that he had under Eberflus, because I just think that they were just funneling everything towards Leonard.
Well, you see it now with Roquan Smith, too.
Yes.
Roquan Smith is the same. It's the same exact situation, same exact player.
Yes, very, very similar. you can have some success in that. And I know why the Colts want to run that cover too, just because we're an inside team. We've always kind of run that zone defense playing inside. Under Bradley, though, I don't think it'll be the same. I think he'll disguise things better. I think he has better personnel. I think that he's going to try to win without Leonard, and I think he's doing okay. But no, I don't think it'll look the same as it doesn't to me. It doesn't. We're not giving dudes 10 yards. We are still playing deep, though. We're not trying to give up the big play. But a lot of teams in the NFL run that same kind of style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cover 2 is incredibly common. I mean, yeah, there's no way around that. And that actually just made me think of a question here. You know, historically, I'm talking like the last 15 years or so, of the elite teams of the AFC, you guys are really the only one that plays inside. How does that affect you guys moving into the playoffs? You know, I'm thinking about just the quick ones on my head: New England, us, Baltimore, Buffalo, and one in the West. So, like, realistically, is that a factor that people just get in their head? Peyton didn't like being outside in the cold in New England, or was it just like you guys just won the South because the South sucks?
No, that's a great question, and a lot of Colts fans will have different opinion on that. Peyton was, I think, with the Colts, I think he was like, 8-8 in the playoffs, something like that, just off of memory. The year that we went to the Super Bowl in 2006 and won it, we had to win at Baltimore, and then we got New England at home when we still played in the Dome. And then I can't remember. Well, I mean, in the Super Bowl, when we beat the Bears, it was crappy weather. Mm-hmm. You know, it was like a monsoon. Yeah. So I don't know. Honestly, what I think the record had to do with was just we came along at the same time a New England and a Pittsburgh, arguably dynasty, came along. And we would beat both of those teams every now and again. I mean, but they had our number, and a lot of times it was because they had home field and we had to go there. So, yeah, you could use the weather as an example. Well, you know, they don't like to play in the cold weather, but you can also say, well, shoot, that team had home field over the Colts. So it's just hard to win. You know, it's hard to win in Three Rivers or whatever, Hines or whatever, Foxborough. Yeah, it's tough, man. So I see what you're saying. I don't think that it's like, are the Colts soft, right? You could make an argument back in the day. They kind of were, like, because we weren't built on D. It was basically in our heyday when Peyton was rocking and rolling, it was like, we're going to outscore you. We got to get to 30 points, and that's our game plan because our defense is going to give up points. Mm-hmm. But I don't necessarily think it was that we were super soft. I just think that a lot of times we played teams that coincided with our kind of run. It was like for example, Andre Agassi, he's my favorite tennis player, right? He won 8 majors or major tournaments. Well, he probably would have won more if he didn't come along at the same time as Sampras. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
It's the Nadal Federer thing too, where, you know, and then you had, who's the British guy? I can't remember. I don't remember his name, but same thing. Like they're all.
Oh, Andy Murray.
Andy Murray. They're all, Andy Murray could never win. And then all of a sudden, once Federer and Nadal were getting a little bit older, Andy Murray finally won one, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, here it is!"
Yes, and so this is what, like, there was so many conspiracy theories going around with the Patriots, and this is before like social media took off, right? Mm-hmm. So like before we won our Super Bowl, we were like a number 2 seed, but we had to play them in Foxborough in the AFC Championship. So this would have been like 2004, something like that. Mm-hmm. And the rumor was that they hosed down the field with, like, you know, a hose just to make it sloppy so our receivers couldn't run free. So like whenever they did like the deflate gate and all that, it was just like, I don't put anything past New England. I mean, they're known cheaters, you know.
I believe it. You know, the funny thing is the rest of the NFL, with the exception of these 2 fan bases, Pittsburgh and the Colts, are talking. We in Pittsburgh, we just don't let things go periodly. But we're the 2 that got exploited by it the most. So when it comes out that they're literally cheating in the way of filming the other team, knowing what they're going to run, it's kind of a big deal. I mean, you know, you see all these great highlights of when a player knows a tendency and can blow up a play. Well, that's normally like once in a blue moon. Like TJ Watt did it 2 weeks ago because every single time Cincinnati goes under center with a tight end to the right, they run to the right. It's like 90%. Guess what? He knew it was going to happen. He blew up Mixon. It was a beautiful play. But if you knew that every single play, there's no way you're not going to win. Like, you would actually have to be a really bad team not to win if you knew exactly what the other team was doing.
Yeah.
And it amazes me that the rest of the NFL doesn't hold this grudge, but it's because we always got destroyed in the playoffs, these two fan bases.
Man.
And it's part of why I can never give Belichick the credit he actually probably deserves.
No, I hate New England. I'll always hate New England. I'll always hate Tom Brady. They've taken so much joy from me. But you know what I hate more? I hate their fans more. I remember
that
when we were at the AFC Championship in 06, there was a decent amount of New England fans, maybe like 15%, and they were just running their mouth loose. Yesterday, Chiefs fans, they're like so nice. You want to try some of our barbecue or, like super cool. It's like, yeah, sure. New England fans were like wanting to fight people in the bathroom. They just ran their mouth the whole time. It's like, shut up.
Well, speaking of New England, John, in 6 weeks, Colts face New England. Mac Jones went down with an injury yesterday with a high ankle sprain. But
he's in trouble.
Before that, I know you say you take one game at a time as a fan, but I was just looking at the schedule, and you got the Titans twice, the Jaguars, the Commanders, and the Broncos. And all
the Jaguars and Tennessee this early in the season?
Twice,
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
As I'm looking at this, and as you were talking about the defense and how the offense, hopefully it can get cooking, it seems like these games are very winnable, and hopefully they can be. Do you see any problems on the horizon before that Patriots game that could affect the way that game would go about? And because honestly, I see you winning at least 3 of those games.
We have to win at least 3. I'm going to the Commanders game. That's when, Carson Wentz comes back, and that's a Halloween game. It's the day before Halloween.
Yeah, October 30th.
Yeah. And it's a night game, so it's going to be rocking and rolling. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to dress up. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to go as Macho Man that game.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
I can't wait.
Halloween Havoc.
Yes, love it. But, yeah, man, it's going to be tough. 3 games is totally doable. I mean, New England's 0-3. Mac Jones is hurt. Is Belichick the guru? Sure, but I just don't think he has the personnel. They just don't. The Commanders, Wentz was sacked 9 times yesterday. You got to win that game. Mm-hmm. Jacksonville, we almost always beat Jacksonville at home. I think we win that game. I think we beat Tennessee at home because we know that we probably won't win there. I think they are totally winnable games. You just got to get the offense going. It's got to start humming. Here's what annoys me about the Colts. There's a lot of things, but they will die on that hill. They will not make changes. Yesterday, they made one change. They took out our rookie safety named Nick Cross, and they put the old wily vet Rodney McLeod in. And I didn't see that coming. And we won, so that worked. But on the O-line, I just see them running out the same unit, and I just don't know if it's going to really improve this year.
Yeah, and noticing that, like, take the I keep calling San Diego. Take the Chargers, for example. When they run almost a completely different system when Eckler is in compared to when he's not. And he has about a 55-60% ratio. So when he's on the field, it's a big swing with – they actually go from a power blocking system to a zone blocking system. It's predictable about which one's out there.
Yes.
But the point is the defense gets hit from different angles. Even if they know it's happening, it's still different. And the one thing I saw it yesterday with tight ends pulling, but very rarely do I see you guys have guards moved in action like that. It's almost always we're basically running a wedge, and Jonathan's going to figure out what hole to go through and make something happen.
So a couple of years ago, I wish I remembered his name. We had an O-line coach, and this would have been the year Luck's last year, so like 2018, and he had us playing nasty. There was like an edge to our line. We were doing different pulls. You were using Nelson all over the place, doing stunts, doing all kinds of stuff we never do. But he was just apparently too mean and too nasty, and we didn't like him enough, so we let him go. And ever since then, we've had this other guy, and it's obvious to me we've taken a step back from that O-line. We're giving up sack. Here's what I hate about the national media. They always think the Colts, they've got a great offensive line, and it's like, but we really don't. We've spent the most money on it, but our line's not good. You've got Nelson, and you've got Ryan Kelly, and that's about it. Your 2 tackles are average. Your right guard is brand new. I just don't. That's what I worry about the most, and it's making Matt Ryan look bad. Honestly, he's not that bad, but he's looking bad because of them.
Yeah, and that's one of my problems in general with box score scouting, because that's basically what it is. Oh, they put up a lot of running yards. They've spent a lot of money. It's got to be good.
Yes,
that's not really how it is on film. Right. I know personally, if I was drawing an offensive line, I ideally would want, obviously that can be the same, but similar resources in all 5 positions across the board evenly, rather than having a stud at one position and 3 that are so-so. Because quite frankly, that's how you get sacked a lot, is when you get in situations like that. You just pick the weakest link, and Myles Garrett lines up over you and wrecks the game, unless it's this year.
But unfortunately, Joe, it's really hard to find guys that are all equal across the board like that.
No one's fighting that. I'm just saying it's a better way to do it.
They're all equally bad, and rarely do you get an opportunity where everybody's like pretty good. I mean, I know Detroit was going through a lot of this recently too, where they would go out and if you guys remember, like Goster Sherilis, right? He was supposed to be like the guy that would save that offensive line, and
former Colt,
garbage.
Yeah, he was garbage.
He was bad. And then I think that when we talk about the national media too, John, is that I think that everybody just has fond memory of Jeff Saturday.
That's true.
That's it, right?
Here, baby.
Exactly.
That's my boy.
That's it, right? And so when you think about and people in general have this misconception, I guess, of the Midwest is just like, you have these big hosses on the line, because most of the big the Big Ten, where we see a lot of it is just, okay, we're just going to push you out of the way. But rarely does it happen that you get 3 out of 5, let alone all 5 working together. Because I know that this is the same thing with LA's problem too, where they can't stay healthy. Mm-hmm. And I know that the Colts in years past, they had a problem with staying healthy as well. And that was just, you can't have a quarterback that can't, like Matt Ryan's old. Like he can't move around as much anymore. Even when he could, it wasn't that good.
I think offensive line's different now too, because of the collective bargaining agreement. They won't allow you to practice as much as you used to be able to practice.
That's a big
back in the day. So and these guys need to take hits. They need to feel that in practice and in training camp. And I think having practices limited now, especially with pads on, that I think it takes them, that position, longer to get going during the season too.
Yeah, because you need to learn how to hit people together. And that's why I think one of the most devastating things, if you get one of your 3 interior linemen hurt in the middle of the year, that can basically derail your season. Yep. It doesn't really matter which one of the 3. It can be the worst of your 3. But if one of them go down, there's just so much of a ripple effect. That's much more than obviously if it was a tackle or something like that.
Yep.
So one question I want to ask you here before we give you a chance to take it off football a little bit here. If there is one magical wand, you can do any single thing you want to either the Colts or the NFL, what would you do?
Ooh, that's tough. Let's see. I don't like the officiating. It would have to be something with the officiating, just off the top of my head. I haven't thought about this. It's just so soft right now. I hate like all the flags being thrown. I think it bogs down the game, especially like just holding and things like that. It just kind of gets on my nerves. I don't like the way it's officiated. Just yesterday, like the Chris Jones thing, right? I'm not a Chiefs fan, but Chris Jones gets that flag for saying bad words really to Matt Ryan, and that's what won us the game. So I'm thankful. I mean, we're going to put a banner with Chris Jones' name on it in Lucas Oil Stadium. He's like the player of the game, but like that should never happen, right? I mean, it's football. Who cares? It's just stuff like that, just off the top of my head.
And that's a great answer, John, too. Before we head into the next segment here, if you could bring back any Colts player from the past, stick them on this roster right now to win games, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to go kind of outside the box here, because you would want me to say, like, not you, but like a lot of Colts fans want me to say like Marvin Harrison.
That's what I would have said.
And I love Marvin or Reggie Wayne, but I don't even think they would make the impact on this roster. So, I mean, you got to say Peyton. But let's say that we can't say Peyton. Then I'm going to go outside the box and go left tackle and say like Tarek Glenn or Anthony Costanzo, somebody like that.
That's a good pick.
Just to kind of like set up that line a little bit better.
I like it.
I don't get how I get what everyone would say, Marvin Harrison, when we started this whole conversation of you're basically one receiver away. I was like,
I like Reggie.
I'd argue he's the most underrated receiver of all time.
And I'd say he's top 5 all time.
I'm
kind of biased, but
they don't treat him like that.
No, they don't.
Because he's in that shadow of when Moss was doing everything.
And Terrell Owens too.
Well, historically speaking, Joe, if you're going to go with a list of wide receivers, your top 3 wide receivers statistically at the position are definitely going to be T.O., Randy Moss, and Jerry Rice. Sure. Now, also success-wise, T.O. and Randy Moss were on teams, if I could be mistaken here, that have won the Super Bowl.
18-1, baby. He was on
Jerry
the 18-1
as well. And so when you want to put another wide receiver in there, a lot of other people are gonna say, okay, what about the Steelers wide receivers from the past? What about Marvin Harrison? What about Chris Carter,
Tim Brown?
Like, it's hard. Hard to say that Marvin Harrison is top 5, but he is.
Yeah,
but it's hard when you're. It's hard when you're making this. When you're making this, it's a difficult decision.
It is.
But anyway, that was just one thing I asked. So Bob, give us your breakdown here. Bring us home.
For me?
Yeah, for as far as you've always wanted to ask people, where do we go to eat? Where do we go to check out?
Man, John, like we've never been to Indy. Okay. I've never been to Indy. He's been there for Notre Dame game, I believe, at some point in time. Mm-hmm. But there's all
Steelers are coming there on a Monday nighter.
All kinds of sporting events are held there. Lucas Oil Stadium, it's a home base for a lot of things. So when we think about where do you like to be at? What do you like to do on game day? What are some things, because you obviously go to a lot of games, what are some things you enjoy doing and would recommend to people that maybe might be coming in from out of town, or maybe some people that are been there for a while and maybe might not know about some of these places? Where do you go? What do you do?
Yeah, for sure. I like to pre-party. So I'll go to like this place called Kilroy's, bunch of TVs. It's a sports bar. I'll do that before Colts, Pacers games, stuff like that. Indy's a nice city. Like you could wear your other team's colors and no one's really going to, drive you crazy, or you don't have to worry about anything. So
like Baltimore.
Right. Just like Baltimore. You're not going to get your ass kicked or anything in Indy. You'll be fine. But I like to pre-party at Kilroy's, drink beer, shoot the breeze with everybody. Then just head that way, just talking to everybody. Lucas Oil's it's a really nice stadium. It's indoors. So if it's even a winter game, it's not like you have to hoof it for a mile to get to the stadium. Everything in Indy is such a nice place to go to. It's why we have Final Fours and stuff like that. Everything is centrally located. So you could bar hop, and there's a ton of bars. There's a ton of restaurants. You can go to each one. There's no cover charge or anything like that. And just, have a couple beers, get some nachos, whatever. And then whenever it's game time, it's really just you crossing a few streets, and then you're in the stadium. And it's not cold because it's indoors. So it's a cool place, man. It's super hospitable. I live about 7 or 8 miles from the stadium, and I work downtown. So if I go to a game, I'll use like my parking pass for where I work, and I'll just walk from there. That's usually
a smart decision.
Yeah, I love that it's flat.
Additionally, if we're talking about like game day food, is there any like concession in the stadium or any like type of meal that it is like your like staple? You're like, I'm gonna do this before the game, and you got a group of friends and they might have the same kind of superstition or anything like that.
Not necessarily in the place. You know how it is at a football game. Everything's so expensive. And that's why we pre-drink, like last time I went, I think it was like $8 or $9 a beer. I mean, it's stupid expensive.
And they're going to get it
here. I bet it's horrible. So not necessarily. Now, if you want to leave and get like food that goes with beer, we have a White Castle. I don't know if you guys have White Castles. They're like little sliders, stuff like that. There's a million places to eat. So I don't really have a ritual necessarily. Once the game's over, I'm usually out of there just to try to get home to the wife. So because she doesn't like football. So I got to get home to her. If I'm staying out there with the fellas, she'll get a little mad.
Yeah, I know your pain.
Yes, I usually get there early, pre-party, eat food, then go to the game, and then just hightail it home.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Well, John, we want to give you a chance to conclude in today's episode. Any self-promotion, anything that you want to bring up, and give you the full screen here and the time.
Okay. I didn't know that you were going to do that, so I don't really have anything that I'm going to pimp out or anything like that. I will say this, though. I'm an animal lover. I have 3 dogs. All 3 of them are rescues. So just, always try to, if you're going to get a dog, or if you think your kid or somebody wants a dog, check out the shelters first rather than going to certain breeders and things like that. And just try to save a dog's life. That would be something that I would support.
Beautiful. And what a beautiful note to end today on. So thank you all for listening. Thank you guys for being team players out there, watching, clicking like and subscribe. And we'll be with you here with the next episode.
All right.